Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope everyone had a great weekend. I am back from the wedding. Hope I had a great time. Hopefully, everybody did well in the markets. Friday was a crazy day, right? I was at the beach, and it was kind of got the move that I've been looking for, right? Where I've been talking about IWM being an outperformer, obviously very, very sensitive to rate cuts, and we were looking for a dovish pal at Jackson Hole. I actually tried to trade this via QQQ, but IWM, I was, kind of got the look I was looking for, where we were looking for a base in this progression gap here at 226. It went slightly under down into the EMAs, as you guys can see, right? It basically just pulled into the 21 and then had that big rip there. But really just based this progression gap here at 228, 226 really nicely, where we closed slightly under, we opened above in between that zone, and then it ripped on Friday. But if you guys remember, I tried to front run this on QQQ actually on this day here, right? Kind of the same idea where we pulled back into the progression gap at 565 to 559. We got a nice hammer candle that obviously touched the bottom on, I think this was Wednesday. Thursday, we got a bar by bar higher low on the daily, and we had an inside bar, right, where we kind of closed just underneath 565. I took like 5 contracts or something like that, and I was up 20%. And I tried to take a screenshot, and then it started to sell. Broke back underneath 565 and obviously closed under. I just didn't have the opportunity to manage it how I wanted. I wasn't going to be able to look at it all day. I had a Monday expiration, right? I didn't want to like come back and this had broken 559 because that was the day I was traveling. But yeah, ended up closing that for a 10% loss, so about 120, 150 bucks. But the next morning it opened at 565, right? It opened, wicked under, and then started to push back through 565, and then we got the rip that I was looking for up into this gap fill here, right around 569, hence the 569 calls. Really nice move, but still, right, I still think this is giving signs of a lower high. Just pushed into the EMAs, didn't really do so super aggressively, right? Obviously, it was a crazy day for a Friday, but saw some selling into end of day off of that 9 EMA 20 day, right? And then today, inside bar near the highs, just below the close from Friday. Still could see a lower high off of this EMA trend flip, right? So really interesting to see how we opened up after Friday, right? If you guys saw Bitcoin as well over the weekend, it gave up the entire PAL pump, if you will. We could see that in the equity markets as well. But that was just kind of recapping the Thursday, Friday trade. Idea worked, just didn't have the timing, honestly, to manage that. So just looking forward now. I just want to wait until Wednesday, right? So Wednesday is obviously NVIDIA's earnings. And I've talked time and time again about this chart, right, where we kind of had this topping pattern now kind of playing out here against 177.55. We ended up breaking and saw the damage done underneath the 920 day. And I'm really just looking for a break under this gap here at 163, but staying pinned against resistance here at 169 to 166. So this is that progression gap, right? So obviously it starts at 166, it closes here at 169. It's essentially the bottom of this demand zone from the current consolidation that we're seeing on the daily. But then if we go back a little bit, this is also kind of nicely, against not only this like 158 spot, but technically the candle low and then the candle open from this gap up day. So really clear spot in my eyes. Also, if we just inverse the chart, so if we just go a little negative sign here, and we look at the inverse of AMD, right, this is a pretty bullish chart, honestly. If you guys take a look, how my eyes naturally gravitate towards things, if we just pull the progression gap here and extend this out a little bit, so we just pull it out, I don't know, to like May. Doesn't really matter how we do it. This is a chart that I would actually be looking to long, right? Where we end up having a bottom here, we push up, we break over the gap here in multiple days of confluence of a rejection. Obviously, this is the big one that we're looking at, right around 157. But we're looking for, some kind of consolidation as a higher low into one of these gaps. And we pushed above, right? We ended up rejecting near the highs of this candle here, but we're consolidating for 1, 2, 3, 4 days above this progression gap and getting very, very tight. So really just looks like it needs a catalyst to further push this out, right, above 157, 158. Using this progression gap here is kind of like our support line, right? And this is a chart you'd long, right? You're starting to get the 921 flip here. If it can press out, as I said, you would look for a move up into this like 157 mark. Then you would look for a move into 153, and then the gap fill here around 146, hence the 145, 140 flat target. Really simple chart here. As I said, if this was just if this was a long setup, I would be longing this without a doubt. Just looking at it now, though, right, without the inverse mark to it, Same exact thing, right? Very, very simple. Just kind of expecting this to be our resistance, or in the inverse kind of method of looking at it, this is our support, and we're looking for a breakdown underneath 163, a push down into this 157 spot, as I mentioned, right? This is that spot we're looking to break out through, and then we get a move down into 153, and then looking for the push down into 145. As I said, I think NVIDIA is the likely catalyst for this either to invalidate, right? So if this ends up breaking out above here and it pulls back down and it kind of bases here, this is invalid, as this will likely push up into this gap fill at 175 and likely continue to like 180-ish. Or if we see continued selling, right, this is going to work out really well, and we can continue to add into this, because I would expect a push down into 153, a bounce, right? You guys kind of get the gist. It would probably push back down into this lower spot here around 157. Then from 157, a breakdown, likely a retest, and then a move down into our target, right? Very, very simple. I still think this can even get more juice underneath 145, as I said, down into this gap here, right? So like 142, and then make its way down into 138. That would be really nice, but still has a little bit of work to do. Just kind of watching the chart as of now, I wouldn't hesitate adding, right? But thing is, we just have earnings so close. I don't want to add and be like 20 cons deep, 30 cons deep, and then this gaps up, and then you can't really control that, right? So I'd rather this do its thing. If it breaks down, we have an opportunity to add off of a pop off of 153, and then look for a breakdown, add again here, right, or roll, and then look for continuation down into 145 and or that 138 mark. So that's what I'm looking at there. I still have the one contract of Meta as well. Chart obviously on Friday got once again a nice little push up into the 920, but still, if we take a look broadly at this, still just pushing up and kind of showing some weakness into the 9-day and the 20-day. Gap is obviously here. We have like a little bit of a resistance zone against these prior day consolidations, right? So the lows from these days here, 8.4, 8.5, leading all the way into like 8.11. So still kind of just holding on to that contract. I would like to see this sell, right, with NVIDIA earnings, if this can break back down under 747.93, retest this again, right, and then get a move through these lows. I would add another contract into that. These are a little pricey. I don't want to have too much of my account into this, but one contract is fine with me. So this is really all I'm looking for, is just weakness in the 920-day. Break back below 747, retest it, not get back above, and then look for a move down below these daily lows here. It's only 3 bars, but should see some kind of a buyer here, or if it flushes through, I think that's where we see the big move down to fill the gap around 695, right? And then from there, right, we talked about this. This would really start a really beautiful look on the weekly for a distribution, right? And this should come down much lower than the 695 gap and start a trend even lower. But that's just a nice little start there, right? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Now that's really all I got, guys. SPY, didn't mean to do that. Let me go back really quick. SPY, if we take a look at SPY, same thing as usual, right? I mean, I've been talking about this nonstop, pretty much just against these highs here, and we've been consolidating. I did mention if we got above into 650, I would close these puts out, but I really want to have this be a time-based trade where we get into September, reach the September OPEX. If we still see new highs being made, or it's not making a new low after the September OPEX of September 19th, if you guys don't know, this little red line here, then I'll be out of these regardless, right? But if we see some kind of weakness, right, if we break down closer to 621, or maybe we even push to 613, right, I'll definitely add in as this starts making lower highs leading into those levels. I just don't want to be adding into these highs just yet, right? It doesn't make sense, even though this is where you can get the cheaper premiums. We just don't have confirmation as of right now. But that Friday candle did slightly break through. Today we opened lower. It looks like we can get a pushback down into, I would say, probably the 920 day. Once again, I would look for it to kind of push down into this white line, which is the close from Thursday going into the gap up Friday. So we're kind of just looking for a move down into this little pocket here, just to keep a healthy downtrend, right, or healthy selling pressure, I would say. I wouldn't say it's a downtrend just yet, but we want to see a move down into the 637, 635 spot, push down lower into 632, and then just kind of continue its way down into 621. If that happens, you guys kind of see every single time we have a big breakdown, my cons go from like neg 50%, 55% back down to like 27, and I end up making back like 3 or 4 grand. So that would be nice. Just still, I don't see a reason to add into this just yet, so hold tight on that. But definitely some signs here, especially if we don't make a new high. But NVIDIA, once again, is probably the catalyst. If this NVIDIA has a major breakout and it ends up breaking way above where it's currently at, right? So if we just take a look at NVIDIA here, NVIDIA, once again, same exact thing, strong Friday move, kind of a move up today, but once again, kind of pulling back down into the 920 day. If we take a look at the daily, that was the daily. Here's the weekly for reference, right? Nice little hammer candle off of the 9, but didn't get continuation over, the highs, which is like this 182.9 spot. So this still gives ground for a potential lower high. Really just using 182.9 as my risk as of right now. And not just for, I don't have a NVIDIA position or anything like that, but just kind of broadly gauging it. But if we can see a sell-off, right, and this is just a lower high, you would expect this to sell underneath this little pivot here at 170, right? 170.75 down into 170. This would really give a nasty look, right? And then this should break down and push down into this unfilled gap at 164, and then ideally just kind of continue trend and fill these gaps that are remaining behind here, right? So like 160, there's one that's I think this is filled at 157, but from there, right, you would expect to move back into like this 152 spot. Really don't want to get too far ahead of myself, right? We got to see a downtrend first. We have to see a sell event from the NVIDIA earnings, which is this Wednesday. So that's pretty much all I got, guys. Just AMD, Meta, and I obviously reviewed IWM/QQQ, which I got stopped out of, and then looking at NVIDIA as like a barometer. I did mention Tesla was a potential long here. It could still be a long, right? This is more of a larger time frame, like a weekly and or monthly. Right now, we did get a nice continuation off of Friday's candle, and then it pushed up into this 346.64 mark. If it can break out through 346 and then base this, right, this would be something where you look for a harmonic break, so a high volume breakout, look for a divergent pullback, and then if it can give us a look like this, I think that this can trade back up into this mark here, right? So you would just kind of look at this lower high and then this lower high. So I would look for like 360 calls from a 346.64 entry. That looks a little bit more, appealing versus trading a breakout here. So just watching this, keeping it on light watch for like some 360 calls, maybe 2 weeks out, maybe even the September 19th expiration to just line that up really nicely with the OPEX. But still, I'm just very cautious with calls as of right now. I don't want to be trading breakouts. I want to be trading harmonic breaks, divergent pullbacks, having a good risk to reward with a clear entry, a clear stop at level, and then looking for these simple highs up here. So that's really all I got for the long side. I was checking out BMNR once again. Chart looks good, right? I mean, this looks pretty damn good pulling back into the 920 day, but risk is slightly broken off this 51.43 mark. And then on top of that, we are seeing a little bit of weakness in crypto, specifically, Bitcoin saw a major sell-off. So just staying kind of, I would just say passive with this one, but this is something I am looking at. If it can shape up and get back above 51.43, we could potentially take calls back up into this spot here at like 57.96 or maybe even the 60 mark up here at 59. So that's really what I'm looking at. Tesla is probably the main focus if there is going to be a long, or looking at BMNR right here. So that's really all I got. Things aren't going to shape up anymore until Wednesday, so kind of hands off unless I see something pre-market. So I am waking up and actively looking for stuff pre-market, so we have something to kind of do, right? I'm trying not to take trades out of pure boredom. I find myself always getting in tricky spots with that, or looking at flow or anything like that. But that's really all I got, guys. So if we can just stay patient till Wednesday, I'm sure we'll find something and kind of get the answers that we're looking for going into September. If things don't work with AMD, or things go up broadly, like SPY through NVIDIA earnings, can cut the losses on that, and then I have a lot of extra cash. Obviously, I'll lose about 8-9K. It is what it is, right? And I've had those for a little bit, but I'll cut those knowing I only had 8 contracts. I didn't get super crazy on that, but that'll open up a good amount of cash. I think I had 16K in the trade overall, so losing 8K, 9K is not that big of a deal. I'll be able to have that money to then kind of add into some of these other names and open up the opportunity cost. So that's really all I got for you guys. Hope everybody has a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll look at anything if there is something in pre-market tomorrow to maybe scalp. But if not, just kind of wait till Wednesday, see what NVIDIA does on earnings, and that will kind of give us our answer moving forward. So appreciate you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow, and I will see you guys on Wednesday, of course, and kind of see what we do from there. All right, guys. See ya.